I worked a remote job in the forests of the Northwest in a small town called Ashwood. I had to drive for an hour every day to get to and from my workplace, which was a research station for wildlife conservation. It was a lonely and boring job, but it paid well, and I liked the nature. I had to stay particularly late that night because we were researching a rare type of owl and documenting its hunting behavior. It was time to head home. I was feeling completely drained and hungry. It was a rainy night, and the road was slippery and dark. I dreaded late-night drives during the rain. It was dangerous and terrifying, but I had no choice, so I picked up my bag and headed out. I started driving when I saw a sign that said the usual road was closed due to a landslide. I had to take a detour, which was a dirt road that went deeper into the woods. I had never driven through this area before, but I put my home address into Google Maps, and it suggested this road. I trusted the app and followed the directions. As I took a turn, my phone service went down, and Google Maps began to glitch out. The voice said, turn left, and then turn right, and then recalculating, and then nothing. The app just froze. I tried to restart it, but it was no use. I had no signal, no GPS, no map. At this point, I felt I had began to live through the beginning of a horror movie. But it wasn't a movie. It was real life. I calmed myself and continued to follow the road, hoping it was the right way. Maybe it would lead me to a main road or a town. Maybe I could find a gas station or a motel. Maybe I could get out of this horrific nightmare. But the road seemed to go on forever, with no signs or landmarks. It was just trees and darkness and rain. The road was bumpy and muddy. I should have been driving slowly and carefully given the conditions. But I was just too scared to do that. I wanted to get home as fast as I could, and I drove like a total madman. I felt like I was going in circles, or worse, in the wrong direction. I felt like I was lost in a maze. I started to feel nervous and paranoid. What if I ran out of gas? What if I got a flat tire? What if I got stuck in the mud? What if I met someone or something in the woods? What if I never got home? I tried to calm myself down and think rationally. I told myself that everything would be fine, that I would find a way out, that I would be home soon. I told myself that there was nothing to be afraid of, that there was nothing in the woods, that there was nothing behind me. But I was wrong. I was so wrong. As I drove, I noticed something strange in the distance in front of me. It looked like the silhouette of a man. At first glance, I just assumed it was another person that had to take the detour like me, and that maybe they had a flat tire or something and needed to flag an oncoming car or truck down for help. I suddenly felt this horrible, dry sensation in my eyes, and my eyes started watering. I closed my eyes and started rubbing them. The sensation eased, and I opened my eyes, and the man was gone. Out of the corner of my eye, I noticed something in the rearview mirror. I focused my tired eyes and saw something. It looked like a tall, thin figure standing in the middle of the road. It was wearing a black suit and a white mask. It had black eyes, no mouth, and no nose. It had no face. It was staring at me. Could it be the man that I saw in front of me just a minute ago? Did I pass him without noticing? I felt a surge of fear and curiosity. What was that thing? Was it a prankster? This late at night in the middle of nowhere? Maybe I'm just hallucinating. It is pretty late. I had heard stories of a creature called Slenderman, but I had never believed them. Could it be him? Could it be real? I didn't slow down or stop. I didn't want to risk getting attacked or abducted by the thing. I didn't want to give it a chance to harm me in case it was indeed real and I wasn't hallucinating. I wanted to get away from it as fast as possible, but as I drove past it, it did something unexpected. It moved, it ran, it followed me, then disappeared. It was fast, faster than any person I had ever seen. It just disappeared in the blink of an eye. I panicked. I stepped on the gas, hoping to get the hell out of this living nightmare. I kept driving and didn't see it. I felt a sense of relief. I drove for a long time. The road seemed to have no end, but at least that thing's gone. I felt so tired and exhausted when suddenly I heard tapping on my right window. I looked, and it was the faceless thing. This time it had a mouth, and it had this uncanny smile on its face. It grinned from end to end, then opened its mouth. I saw hundreds of sharp needle-like teeth Then I heard a sound, and it sounded like a whisper of madness, a whisper of death, a whisper of fear, my fear. I screamed and swerved the car, trying to shake it off, but it was too late. It had grabbed the door handle and opened it. It had climbed into the car and sat next to me. It had wrapped its long arms around me and pulled me close. It had leaned its faceless head towards me and whispered in my ear. It whispered things I couldn't understand. It whispered things I couldn't forget. It whispered things I couldn't bear. It whispered things that broke me. It whispered things that changed me. I was not sane. I was not safe. I was changed. Forever changed. By the thing, by the horror, by the Slenderman. I don't know how long it whispered. It felt like forever. I'm not a particularly religious man, but I started praying. I knew then and there that if such horror exists in this world, that only God can save me now. It felt like the end, but it wasn't. Somehow it let me go. Somehow it left me alone. Somehow it disappeared. I don't know how, but it did. I reached the end of the road. I saw the lights and the buildings. I saw the people and the cars. I saw the life and the normality. My prayers were answered. I started crying. I started weeping and wailing as if mourning my own death. But I was not dead. I was alive. I'm not a religious man, so I couldn't believe my prayers were answered. I felt a sense of relief and joy that I've never experienced before or since. I had made it. I had escaped. I had survived. But the thing was still there. It was still in my mind. It was still in my memory. It was still in my fear. It was not gone. It was never gone. It was always there, watching me, waiting for me, haunting me. I realized then that I had not escaped. I had not survived. I had not lived. I had only delayed the inevitable, delayed the horror, delayed the thing. I realized then that I was not free. It was not gone. It was never gone. It's within me. The fear of it, the horror of it, forever within me. My prayers were not answered. They never were. I am a living husk of myself, a slave to unfathomable fear, a slave to the thing, a slave to my own body, to my own mind. My soul died that night. I was never the same. I was alive, but no longer living. It was a dark and stormy night. I know it sounds like a cliche, but that's how it was. I was driving alone on a deserted road in the middle of the woods, trying to get to my friend's cabin for the weekend. The rain was pouring down hard, making it difficult to see anything beyond the headlights of my car. The wind was howling and the thunder was rumbling. I turned on the radio, hoping to find some music or news to keep me company, but all I got was static and occasional bursts of distorted voices. I gave up and turned it off. I looked at the clock on the dashboard. It was almost midnight. I should have been there by now, but I had taken a wrong turn somewhere and got lost. I cursed myself for not bringing a map or a GPS. I had relied on my phone, but it had died hours ago. I decided to keep driving, hoping to find a sign or a landmark to guide me. Maybe I could spot a light or a house in the distance. Maybe I could flag down another car or a truck. Maybe I could get out of this nightmare. As I drove, I noticed something strange on the side of the road. It looked like a large, dark shape, standing upright. It was too big to be a person and too hairy to be a bear. It had long arms and legs and a massive head. It was staring right at me. I felt a surge of fear and curiosity. What was that thing? Was it a wild animal? A prankster in a costume? A hallucination? I had heard stories of strange creatures in the woods, but I had never believed them. Could it be one of them? Could it be Bigfoot? I didn't slow down or stop. I didn't want to risk getting attacked or abducted by the creature. I didn't want to give it a chance to harm me. I wanted to get away from it as fast as possible. But as I drove past it, it did something unexpected. It moved, it ran, it followed me. It was fast. Faster than any animal I had ever seen. It was keeping up with my car. It was closing the gap between us. I panicked. I stepped on the gas, hoping to outrun it, but it was no use. It was too close. It reached for my car. It tapped on the window. It made a loud and horrible noise. It sounded like a scream of rage, a scream of hunger, a scream of terror. My scream. I don't know how long I screamed. It felt like an eternity. It felt like the end. But it wasn't. Somehow I managed to snap out of it. Somehow I managed to regain control of myself. Somehow I managed to fight back. I grabbed the steering wheel and jerked it to the right. I swerved away from the creature and onto the opposite lane. I hoped there was no oncoming traffic. I hoped there was no collision. I hoped there was a way out. There was. As I drove on the wrong side of the road, I saw a sign. It said, "Welcome to Pine Ridge." It was the name of the town where my friend's cabin was. It was the name of my destination. It was the name of my salvation. I felt a surge of relief and hope. I was almost there. I was almost safe. I just had to keep driving. I just had to reach the town. But the creature was not giving up. It was still following me. It was still trying to catch me. It was still screaming. It was louder than the rain, the wind, and the thunder. It was louder than my heartbeat, my breathing, and my thoughts. It was louder than anything I had ever heard. It was deafening. I tried to ignore it. I tried to focus on the road. I tried to find the cabin. I tried to survive. But it was hard. It was hard to see in the dark and the storm. It was hard to navigate in the unfamiliar and winding road. It was hard to drive in the fear and the panic. But I did. I don't know how, but I did. I reached the town. I saw the lights and the buildings. I saw the people and the cars. I saw the life and the normality. I felt a wave of joy and gratitude. I had made it, I had escaped, I had lived, but the creature was still there. It was still behind me, it was still after me, it was still screaming, it was angry, it was furious, it was desperate. It made one last attempt to get me. It leaped into the air and landed on the roof of my car. It smashed the glass and reached for me. It clawed and bit at me. It tried to drag me out. I fought back. I kicked and punched at it. I grabbed a knife from the seat and stabbed it. I tried to get it off me, but it was strong. It was stronger than me. It was stronger than anything. It was unstoppable. It was about to kill me. But then something happened. Something unexpected. Something miraculous. Something saved me. A gunshot. A loud and clear gunshot. A gunshot that pierced the night and the storm. A gunshot that hit the creature and made it fall. A gunshot that came from somewhere else. A gunshot that came from someone else. Someone who saw me, who helped me, who saved me. I looked out the window and saw him. He was standing on the sidewalk holding a rifle. He was wearing a hat and a coat. He was an old man. He was a stranger. He was a hero. He looked at me and nodded. He gestured for me to get out of the car. He gestured for me to follow him. He gestured for me to be safe. I did. I got out of the car and ran to him. I thanked him and hugged him. I asked him who he was and what he did. I asked him how he knew and why he cared. He smiled and answered. He said his name was Steve. He said he was a writer and a researcher. He said he knew about the creature in the woods. He said he cared because he had seen it before. He said he had a story to tell. He said he had a story to share, a story to write, a story to finish. I followed Steve to his house, which was not far from where he had shot the creature. He invited me in and offered me some coffee and cookies. He said he had a lot to tell me, and I had a lot to hear. He said he was glad I was alive, and I said I was glad he was there. He said he was sorry for what I had gone through, and I said I was sorry for what he had seen. We sat down on the couch, and he began his story. He said he had been living in Pine Ridge for over 20 years, and he had always been fascinated by the woods and the mysteries they held. He said he had been writing books and articles about the strange and unexplained phenomena that occurred in the wilderness, such as sightings of cryptids, ghosts, UFOs, and other anomalies. He said he had interviewed hundreds of witnesses and collected thousands of documents and evidence. He said he had dedicated his life to finding the truth and sharing it with the world. He said he had first encountered the creature that had attacked me about 10 years ago when he was hiking in the woods with his dog. He said he had heard a loud roar and seen a huge hairy figure emerge from the trees. He said he had frozen in fear and watched as the creature approached him. He said he had thought he was going to die, but then his dog had barked and charged at the creature, distracting it and giving him a chance to run. He said he had escaped it, but his dog had not. He said he had never seen his dog again. He said he had been haunted by that experience ever since, and he had vowed to find the creature and avenge his dog. He said he had spent years researching and tracking the creature, which he believed was a type of Bigfoot, but more aggressive and dangerous than the ones reported elsewhere. He said he had learned its habits, its territory, and its weaknesses. He said he had prepared himself for a confrontation, and he had waited for an opportunity. He said he had seen the opportunity when he had noticed my car driving on the road. He said he had recognized the creature following me, and he had grabbed his rifle and ran outside. He said he had aimed and fired, hoping to hit the creature and save me. He said he had succeeded, but he had not killed the creature. He said he had only wounded it, and it had fled into the woods. He said he had followed it, but he had lost its trail. He said he had returned to his house, and he had found me waiting for him. He said he was sorry he had not killed the creature, and he said he was worried it might come back. He said he wanted to finish what he had started, and he said he wanted me to join him. He said he had a plan, and he said he had a weapon. He said he had a story to tell, and he said he had a story to share. He said he had a story to write, and he said he had a story to finish. He said he wanted to end the nightmare. He said he wanted to end the story. He said he wanted to end the creature. He asked me if I was with him. I looked at him and nodded. I said I was with him. I said I wanted to end the nightmare too. I said I wanted to end the story too. I said I wanted to end the creature too. I said I wanted to see it dead. He smiled and got up. He said we had to hurry before the creature recovered and escaped. He said we had to go before it got dark and stormy again. He said we had to act before it was too late. He said we had to finish the story. He said we had to finish the creature. He said we had to finish the horror. He handed me a rifle and a flashlight. He said we were going to the woods. He said we were going to hunt the creature. He said we were going to kill the creature. He said we were going to be heroes, and he said we were going to be legends, and he said we were going to be writers. He opened the door and we walked out. We walked towards the woods where the creature was waiting for us. We walked towards the woods where the story was waiting for us. We walked towards the woods where the horror was waiting for us. We walked towards the end. I was driving home from a long day at work, feeling tired and bored. It was a dark and stormy night, and the rain was pouring down hard on my windshield. I turned on the radio to keep myself awake, but all I could find was some static and a few old songs. I decided to take a shortcut through the woods, hoping to save some time and avoid the traffic. I had driven this route many times before, and I knew it well. It was a narrow and winding road, surrounded by tall trees and thick bushes. There were no street lights or signs, and the only other cars I saw were the occasional headlights of oncoming vehicles. I felt a bit uneasy, but I shrugged it off as paranoia. I was about halfway through the woods when I noticed something strange. There was a large dark shape on the side of the road just a few feet away from my car. It looked like a big pile of trash or debris, but as I got closer, I realized it was something else. It was an animal, but unlike any animal I had ever seen before. It was about the size of a bear, but it had a long, slender body and a long, bushy tail. It had 4 legs, but they were thin and muscular and ended in sharp claws. It had a small, round head with 2 pointed ears and 2 glowing red eyes. It had a mouth full of razor-sharp teeth and a long, forked tongue. It was covered in dark, matted fur, and it smelled like rotten meat. It was a cryptid, a creature that was not supposed to exist. I had heard stories about them, but I never believed them. I thought they were just myths and legends made up by people who wanted to scare others or get attention. But now I was face to face with one, and it was staring right at me. I felt a surge of fear and panic, and I slammed on the brakes. The car skidded to a halt, and the creature let out a loud, guttural roar. It lunged at me, breaking the window with its claws. It tried to grab me, but I managed to dodge its attack. I reached for the door handle, hoping to escape, but it was too late. The creature was faster and stronger than me, and it pinned me down with its weight. It opened its mouth, ready to bite my head off. I screamed, and then I woke up. It was all a nightmare, a horrible, vivid nightmare. I was still in my car, but I was not in the woods. I was in my driveway, parked in front of my house. The rain had stopped and the sun was rising. I looked around and I saw no sign of the creature. It was gone, and so was my fear. I breathed a sigh of relief and I laughed at myself. I had let my imagination run wild, and I had dreamed up a monster. It was not real. It was just a product of my tired and bored mind. I felt silly and embarrassed, and I wondered what had triggered such a nightmare. Then I noticed something on my dashboard. It was a book that I had borrowed from a friend a few days ago. It was a book of paranormal stories written by a guy named Steve Stockton. It was called Strange Things in the Woods. There was something in the woods and it was coming for me.